America, you know, making it illegal to teach people of color to read. You know, the Alabama Slave Codes of 1833. And so now we're in a time where we're trying to censor information. When our first right is freedom of speech, and the most primary and the most plentiful natural resource that we have is each other, and to learn from each other. And banning books is, I guess, I'm getting in the introduction, I'm getting more into the conclusion. And banning the books is similar to us limiting our information. And this is a call of action for all of us to be included in. And so that's why we're so grateful that you all took time to come here. I turn it over to Terry because I can be wrong.
So I would like first to open this up to say, like, even though we have a discussion, I want to also pull from your experiences as well. And I will share sort of like one of the conversations that we're having right now is with our school district. School districts that are trying to ban certain literature from the school, which usually leaves out our stories. And I'll say our stories because I was just talking about this earlier today. When I think about American history and the stories that make up American history, usually people of color is not included in that overall narrative, and they were given a little section over here. So you might have African American History Month, or this History Month, where all of that is actually part of our history, and so it should be included in the overall curriculum. But for me, the banned book conversation in schools is very dangerous because we got folks here who don't know their own actual history because they're being fed this, pieces of it here and there. So, but I would love to know from people here today about, what is your experience has been so far with this topic, and then we could probably talk about the division that comes with that too. So, anyone that want to share? Yes, up there, different.
My takeaway from the whole ban books and restricting access, banning books doesn't have the outcome that people think it will. You saw it with Mouse, it shot to #1. Comic book store in Tennessee made a waiting list for it because the library's got posters out the door. It doesn't do what they think it will.
Right.
And the argument usually is it's for the children. Kids are smart.
Yep.
They're going to find the information somewhere else.
Right.
If they have access to a public library, they're going to go there. If they have access to mom and dad's Amazon account, they can just buy it there. They're going to find it somewhere else.
Right.
Or they're going to use their friends, their cousins. They're going to find the information. You can't stop that.
Right.
So I think it also disrespects kids' ability to figure things out in the world. You're assuming that, I can't get it at school, so that's just the end of the conversation. Yep. See it all the time. They figure it out. And I think it's just a huge waste of resources.
Yeah.
You can let people read the book, make their decisions, have a conversation, and move forward from there. But to put forth all this effort and legislation and time, and school board elections, there's so many other things that can actually benefit from those kind of hyper-focused sections. Then this picture looks a threat. Let's say.
Yes.
Book banning has been going on for this country for a couple hundred years.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically out of fear. Fear that truth or different information is exposed to their children.
Right.
But as you were saying, book bannings have a reverse effect. The fact that now, when people find out about what books are banned, they go seek them out.
Yep.
Which is totally opposite of what the intent of these banned books are.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a two-edged sword. You really don't want to see banned books because it's an indicator of people's fears and what their expectations are. But in the long run, banned books really, I think, help the sales of books. There are so many examples of banned books that all of a sudden have become bestsellers because the notoriety.
Right.
So, I mean, you have to look at the undertone of what it really means. It means that people are still stepping backwards, they're regressing.
Yeah.
They're trying to go back to a time that they're living in a fantasy world, if you will. But the overall effect is that it really is a positive thing for actually the books. But like I said, the underlying factor is it's fear, and it's an indicator that our people are thinking backwards. They're really wanting to go back to the 40s and 50s, further back than that. And that's sad. Now that
Right.
is sad commentary on our country.
I agree. I think when we were talking about it the other day about the division piece, fair was one of the, I don't know if you put up fair or not, but that was definitely one that I definitely do agree with. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
For someone that just moved 8 years ago, from a country that doesn't have freedom of speech and where people doesn't have the opportunity to write, to read, because
Right.
you'll be seen as someone against the government, the politics, or against someone in power. I think as the U.S., really trying to go back to these options where it's trying to find a way for people not to have the information that they need to know. I think we're just going really far away from the history. And my perspective from the experience that I came from, that's not the right way to go because in other countries around the world, they don't have the freedom to speak, to write, to
Yeah.
read, for education. And those countries, they are suffering. Not just the country has a country, but also the people, because the people is being oppressed to stay without the information, like the needed information about your history, your story, so you can really build the country that is needed for people to grow in this country. So I do believe that really the people that is making those decisions, running this book and just kind of like oppressing the freedom for people to live, they should think very careful where they want to go, with those decisions. Because the ignorance is danger. When people doesn't know what is happening, it's more danger when people know what they need to know in order for not to repeat the history. Because those ignorance will not just pass to the children's now, but will also pass to the future. And the more one of the gentlemen here mentioned, like the fear of see that there is like some kind of like history that will be discovered for people reading this kind of book, that we need the truth.
Yeah.
So the question we need to make is, what kind of truth do we need in order for us to heal from our past?
Right.
Because we already know that fear is danger. Fear is more danger when people try to oppress the other people to get to know the truth. So how can we really build a country when fear will not be the first argument to kind of like ban good or to take the freedom for education and information to all the children and people that they are around. I have a 16 years old and I consider my son very smart.
Wow.
Sometimes I tell my son, you were born 100 years ago. Because the questions and the answers and everything that he tells me, I'm like, oh wow. So how the children that has so much information now and knowledge, how can you oppress the children to have access to a book that he knows how to get access if he wants to because of the social media? So it's really very important for us to know what kind of truth and what kind of education we want for our children in the future and what kind of environment we are trying to to grow in our country is peaceful, by love, by fear. This is very important.
Right.
You from Angola, right?
Yeah.
You talking about how toxic masculinity. They don't want you to be in a certain position because you're a woman or speaking But to add to that point, I think like children's book authors like Brittany Brittany J. Thurman, they're creating information that so kids can see themselves in these stories and empower themselves at an early age and also see themselves in the story, but not only just see themselves in the story, but to be able to mentally create a window to see themselves in the future from being able to see themselves early on in these stories. And I think the whole concept of banning information starts at an early age because I went back to my elementary school where, literacy is a problem for Black children in my school district. And I think it's 4 out of 5 people in our alternative school, juvenile, they're behind in reading. 3 out of 5 prisoners can't read. And so here I am coming back to my own hometown as a published author and saying, hey, not only can you read these stories, but you can write these stories. And people had to fit. They didn't want me in my own school. I went to the bookstore, my own local bookstore, and books everywhere in the world, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, everywhere. I go in my little country bookstore where books got tons of dust on them, and the guy tell me, we don't want that book in here. But you have a whole section dedicated to the Confederacy. And we've had hundreds of years of the Daughters of Confederacy publishing books in Texas and feeding this white supremacy nonsense to little Black boys and little Black girls like me for hundreds of years, and nobody banned those books. But now I'm talking about like what Brittany is doing is creating books that empower our people, and we get all this backlash. And so it's intentional, and we have to say that in order to get better from it. We have to say it's a purpose behind this controlling of information. But that's why this book festival is so powerful, because there are a lot of storytellers here who are not accepting that narrative. Not only just saying what you were saying, sir, is like those books, and you were saying like those books that are banned, it conjures up our interest, and we go and support those. So that's what I guess that's more toward the end of it, is finding a solution for.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you're right. If you ever tell someone don't do something, consciously you want to just do what you was told not to do, right? So banning books is probably one of the best marketing things out there. How you like, I was sell a copy of my book to Ted Cruz, like, hey man, I want to just send this copy to you, do what you like with it, No, but I think, and I want to go back to what you said too, by the way, Summer, because that was my argument with the school district, was about the First Amendment rights. Like, so if you're going to talk about being in the U.S., and we do have a Constitution, and that part of that Constitution, the very First Amendment was the freedom of speech, right? Not the second, the first one. And I said to that, if you're going to be a country that truly talks about these freedoms, these rights and freedoms, you can't ignore one like the First Amendment and then say, we are this free country. I was so my title of the book, forget the content of the book, just the title of the book. I usually get this look, and I saw some of it in this festival. I saw it when I was in Pennsylvania, right? So the title, as you can see, the big letters catch your attention. Like, oh, welcome to the Sigma of the Same Person. That's cool. And you read the other text like deconstructing racism and white supremacy, and like, well, I don't know about that one. And so I encourage folks to say, yeah, you know what? That title is not as divisive as you might think it is. And one of my arguments to that too is when I think about this concept of book banning, and I was talking to some administration, they told me, this is a true story, they said, like, listen, some of the topics, especially about racism, it makes people feel bad. They were talking about the kids, like, little Johnny reads about slavery, now he feels bad, or he reads about, and we're talking about the imprisonment of the Japanese Americans during now they feel bad. And I'm saying, well, maybe that feeling is called empathy. Maybe little Johnny was raised appropriately to have empathy, and he thinks to himself, how can another human treat another human that way? So let's reevaluate what Johnny's feeling, and not just say that he feels I tell you right now, if I've done something wrong to somebody, yes, I might feel guilty. But if someone was done wrong by somebody else and I know about it, I'm going to feel empathy. I want to feel for that person. And so I think we're talking about banned books. He has, who's that young girl that said, what's the difference between a writer and an author? Someone mentioned it, right? The young people, I'll tell you right now, they're going to change the world. Right? It got me thinking today. I was like, wait a minute, he got me thinking, right? I said to her, I said, a writer, anyone can be a writer. You can write about anything, about any time, but the author, they're the storytellers. They're the ones that, they're the one that tells the narratives, right? So if you're going to tell the narratives already, by all means, and you have the opportunity to evoke empathy or whatever that might be, that's a great thing. So I think we have to change that narrative as authors, as writers. We have to want to say, listen, our story is not here to make you feel guilty. It's here to tell the truth, but also to instill that empathy that makes so much thirst for. So to John, I've done conversations in school, in the middle school. I said the best audience is middle schoolers and the elderly, and people in between are cool. But those two demographics, I get great discussions. And part of my presentation, part of my presentation is called Back to Racism, and I just put up pictures on a slide. And one of the pictures is when we have their hair touched. All the black kids in that auditorium is erupting, and the teachers understand why these kids erupting, because those kids had a story to tell that they were not being able to tell, and it was not represented in their literature or whatever it may be. The fact that you had a presenter talk about why it's inappropriate to touch someone's hair, I brought that to light in that school. And I think those are the kind of things that as an author or as an educator, we're responsible for. So, yeah. That's about what Johnny made me think about. You don't want to look Johnny to feel bad. Johnny had anything to feel bad. We just left recess. But at the same time, we're really concerned about what Johnny person is. And I said words of things they have power. And people are trying to use words to great people are the ones who are being suppressed. While Johnny real threat is the number one killer of kids in school. School ages go violence. I'm talking about abandoned suppressing, state lines from violent assault rifles. We're talking about being encouraged that we're going for it. And so there's a power in us acknowledging that, accepting that. Dr. King said the tragedy of American history is that the children of the prophets are critical for the zealous children of the light. And we must be the children of the light, bring these stories to life, to share with these kids, so that they not only can understand the past and how to face the present, use that knowledge to protect us. Education and factor of that try and ears eyes. So banning again that it's not and don't see there. This is that's just in general. People take everyone their history of education. They try to keep every now on anything. What's interesting to me, you mentioned that some of the sponsorship is now a lot of the banning, they're trying to ban narrative first time I heard the narrative, and I don't want to pick on any states, but we're going to talk about Florida just a little bit. I remember the first time I heard, yeah, that slavery. I heard the first time slavery was they got skills, right? Remember that one? I got I got myself thinking was, in addition to Vanny, why stories that you read about and folks that's in this room right about is so important is because if we're not telling those stories, somebody's going to tell it for us, right? And when they tell it for us, you better believe it's not going to be us in mind. I in my book, the very first chapter, I talked about George Washington, right? And again, George Washington, first president, we all know that made out of, well, they say wood, but it's really, the slave teeth. The legends were wood, right? Right. What's amazing to me, this is the story of George Washington, the story of George Washington's slaves, is pretty much out there, right? And I remember reading a book of King George, which was one of his slaves that actually escaped. And he spent the majority of the rest of his life trying to get that slave back. But he didn't do it in a big way because he was president of the United States. He can't be looking that way, right? So he did it in other ways, trying to get that slave back. And our whole life, she pretty much avoided George Washington. And I said the one thing that's important is because we can talk about George Washington, right? Again, I'm not trying to knock what he's accomplished. But what I'm trying to say is that we still need his story just as much as we need Mookie Judge's story. Right? We need folks to talk about Mookie Judge and his other slave Hercules, which was a chef, right? We need those stories to still be told. We still need Box John, what's his name? Yeah, Pennsylvania. I was messing the name by his story, though, right? He bound himself to Pennsylvania for freedom, right? We still need those stories. And they need to be told by us because there is a reason that these stories exist for us. And I would challenge anyone, and I have, and says, one of my closest friends says, Terry, why are you always talking about slavery? Why are you always talking about these hurtful times? And I was like, that might be hurtful times for you, but to me, it empowers me too, right? I mean, I sit around tables, that I call the big wigs, right? And sometimes I say to myself, look where we are at. It took our ancestors to build that for us. It wasn't like one day I woke up and say, you know what, I'm going to work at a university and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be an author. It started because those before us paved that way. And for that reason, their stories always have to be told. And I say that to any author about any demographic. And we're talking about race today, but that goes to gender, that goes to sexual orientation, whatever it may be. Is that if there's a narrative that empowers us as a people, it has to be told. It has to be told. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Anybody? I'm sorry. And the question on the table is anything. There's really no questions. Yeah.
themselves in problems. They don't have access to learn about the history of themselves and understand that they can way beyond enslavement. You see, that's what I'm afraid of. So yes, they face into this conflict, but let's get to the root cause of it. We are just fully oppressing our children. That's what we're doing.
I want to add I always say that we need African American History Month. If we talk about African American history all year, there's so much more to everybody's story than just slavery and Kunta Kinte and these. Yeah, there's so much more. I'm privileged to let this room. All these contributions were created by people of color, but if we just include them in the narrative and not keep those stories out, then people can grow up and feel more part of the culture. And then,
We all connected.
yeah,
We are all connected.
in the African proverb says, I gotta go back to this. It says that the story of the hunter only favors the hunter until the lion shares the truth. And so,
Yeah.
Did you want to say something?
Oh, it was funny because there was a keyword that made me think about something too. Is what other pieces of power are sharing our stories? And we were talking about this the other day. Is that I could listen to a story about African American history, and then listen to a story about Dominican, and then and you realize something is that we are all overlapping, right? And we were talking about this too. It's like one of the things about banned books is that by banning our narratives, we do not get to explore each other's narratives. I was during 2020, and I'll share this story. During 2020, when Asian hate was really rampant high, me and one of my colleagues got together and said, we're going to do a story on Asian hate. And it would be nice if, Terry, you do it with me because people know who you are in this community and just having that conversation. And when she was sharing with me, and she's a scholar in this topic, she was sharing with me some of the history behind the Japanese Exclusion Act. And I think it was 18, I forget the year, but that act also was a part that sort of sparked the civil rights movement. Now, I've been deep in civil rights movement for a while. I had no idea that the Japanese Exclusion Act was a part that shaped that. And then the other we were talking, and you said that it wasn't in there. I was like, yes, that's what I remember that because that's part of this conversation is that when you realize that, yes, our story as individual as it could be, they're really not individual at all. And I think that's why I love what you just said because it's exactly what I was thinking about. It's like by sharing our narratives, we realize we have more in common than we actually have in being divisive. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I'm always an academic, so I'm always okay, let's get this straight. And so I think you're gonna have to look and you're you have to look at the churches, you're gonna have to look to the nonprofits, you're gonna have to look to people doing things in the right? You have to go into the project with the canned food, you better start showing up the books too, and history, because somebody's gotta teach it, and you can't look at people who are getting paid by the federal or state governments, right? Because that's being held over them, they break. And I'll just say with the legislation, you said you work with Terry and higher ed as well. So probably on your mind, what state are you in?
I'm in Pennsylvania, and I've had this conversation because as we're talking about Florida, Texas, who's really been, I said, leading the charge in this banned book conversation, right? I went back to my university. I'm like, what are we going to do if we become the new Florida, Texas? Right? What's our plan? Because Pennsylvania, you guys know, like Ohio, they're purple states. They could swing any given time. They can go one way. Georgia's like they're like teetering the purplish right now. They're like, maybe, but any election time, it could swing one way, and then we are now having the conversation that people in Florida are having, or people in Texas are having. Yeah.
I just want to say, some Tennessee little, and the cooling in Texas, I mean, I see where they're not renewing, and plastic getting renewed, and, these sorts of things, so that is working, so we gotta figure out, we can't hold people are getting done, they're getting paid, get any checks to do the education. And we're seeing it in the black church, the black church, we're seeing it. South Michigan, when they tell people to read, they did it, and so it's happening again, I think that's what. Example.
Actually, in the conversation, yes. Yeah.
This is all they do.
Yeah.
Yes. What they're doing is they're going to state legislature and they're campaigning and doing grassroots work. Get things changed in the legislature, in the state.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of groups that are outside the government. They're really not mainstream. They were not mainstream organizations. These were a lot of volunteers. They worked hard to get legislation to pass. This particular group is just around in getting the state legislature and the DeSantis to insert AAPI history into the curriculum of Florida schools, which is basically because reading, like I said, reading the banned books and so on and so forth. Not that they get the AAPI history again, but they two guys who get teaching Japanese camps. Each of that same bill, now the state mandated now these kind of grassroots NPO type organizations going out and tweaking the system to get things changed. They went through the system, certain things that go. So it's so much better than just standing there and protesting. And, I don't know, protest. These guys are smart and hurting the system to make it so great. You know, hurting the things and getting the system. That's what it should be in terms of energy and do kind of thing. Well, it doesn't have to be just for AAPI. Think about it's the kind of energy that we need to get things changed in the legislature. So it's crossfire. So we can't do school district. And that's what we use the system to change.
I mean, maybe that's a question that that's that you talked in 2020. And using a key though that is important, and that's grassroots. And so, you know, the conversation that I've been having with organizations that has a focus on social justice or what have you not, is that some of the actions don't meet their mission. So what I mean by that is it was the conference in tomorrow and we say and reimagine see what have you not. Just quickly. Like there's no, you know, you get there's a room full of folks in there you had because of what I was doing. And I identified in that panel was you have folks who were let's abolish police, you have folks on reducing the footprint, and then you had those who was reform. Those are the three different areas. I've had a fourth one called sustain, because there are folks out there that want to change anything, right? So, and there was a true argument going on about who can be a part of which group and what they should be doing. And I said the whole time the goal was public safety, right? And so I think one of the things that we talked about the other day too is it would be nice to see a coalition of individuals who have the same focus, the same goals, actually work together to make those changes. The AAPI in my local community, they're doing amazing work. I've partnered with them not just with Stop Asian Hate, but also the anti-blackness movement and anti-Semitism movement and Islamophobia, all that together. And we put together this campaign of "You Are Welcome," and it was in different languages. And every business, we asked them to put that up in their business, and every government municipality building as well. That all started because of that collaboration. We all had a similar goal. We wanted to see a community where hate was not welcome. Uh, but that was just one task, right? I would like to see that on a grander scale. It'd be like, you know what, as a organization, we have similar goals, which is no hate or also the DEIB. That's the new thing right now, right? DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Right? We all have that same goal. However, some of our actions, either we're working separately or we're working against our own interests, which is also problematic too. So, yeah. Yeah.
On that, the people in the information science
Yes.
sometimes you have to guess policy. How do we as the professionals how do we engage in the community? What are you doing today? There's an issue, there's a problem, there's an action that someone can take. So how do you help them decide that you're defending the right to your library for you as an adult, you as a kid, is the thing you should focus on? Not to do anything else. There's so much happening. How do you engage people who are just I don't care where it doesn't impact me? I don't know kids, my right here. That's not my story. It doesn't matter. How can we in these fields and as community members we can rally around that this is so important and it does impact so many sectors.
I, part of your question, I thought about another quote from Dr. King when he was saying that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And I hear all the time when I think Whoopi Goldberg was making an example of when the Holocaust was happening. We didn't say anything. It didn't affect us. When people in the trans community are still being murdered because of their sexuality, we didn't say anything because it didn't affect us. But then when George Floyd was on the ground screaming for his life, I'm looking around like, why isn't anybody saying anything? But what have I said to take up other groups that don't look like me? So I think it's all the above strategy. I think its solutions are multifaceted. The person out there on the picket line is standing up in the road. They know how to do that. The people that organize and go to try to get federal legislation passed. I think it's solutions are complex sometimes. They take all the above strategy. But what is unique in America is there's been a system that has been designed not to serve us. I know older men working in the barbershop talk about they went fighting world wars against Germany and came back home, and this German prisoner of war that was staying down the street in a bigger house and got a better loan and would come up there and spit on his front porch. The black man, he had to take it. And that was an insult because the front porch was an extension of your indoor home. You used to keep your outdoor pool because you go out there to be cool. And so you had to bow there and say, yes, sir. Man, come in the house and grab a biscuit off of, you know how boys, you know how we feel about biscuits sometimes in the South. And so this guy come in and take the piece on the side of the house and come in and grab a biscuit before the kids did. We talked about how that stained his life. So I think we have to take into consideration there is a system in place, and the system has been working against people of color the way it was designed. It was written in the Constitution that I'm sitting there right now. It's according to our Constitution that 3/5 of a human being. I'm a fraction of a person, and that's why I'm saying that storytelling. We have to right that wrong in our history and tell the stories that include that, so that we can see ourselves in the grand scheme of this entire nation. And whatever method that is, if Apple makes it, any means necessary to get to a solution. I mean, I'm not in judgment of anybody for their methods, but I'm just saying George Floyd needed help. So if protesting is your thing, and as long as you not, you don't put out a fire with fire. Fire truck. I've never seen a fire truck come with a blowtorch and say, hey, we're solving the problem. We're burning it. No, they come with water. So the solution to solving hate is through love. And that's its solutions are multifaceted. They come in different forms.
I want you to press that button. You see it blinking? Yeah, press it. Time. There you go. Cool. It's blinking? No, he said, oh, in the back. There you go. Okay, good. So I have an answer to that question. That's why. But you got me thinking about another Malcolm X quote was, I'm for justice no matter who is for or against. And that's what it got me thinking when you said that, because that's exactly what you're saying is you got to be for justice no matter who is for or against. Speaking of. So for answering your question though, because I get that a lot, is in this time where there's so much divisiveness and people are getting burnt out, they're just being burnt out, especially if you are you're on a flow, you're trying to push stuff either with your legislation or with your business or whatever it may be. Family. Yeah. I got a great story about that too. So I always say to folks, strategize, mobilize, materialize, right? I think, matter of fact, again, go back to my book. The last chapter is called Playing the Fifth Note. And those who are musicians, I love jazz. And jazz, that fifth note is the note that entices the listener, right? So you play that fifth note and keep you enticed and you're coming back for more. What's next? What's the next run? I think a lot of us who are in that space get so burnt out because we are not checking in with our strategy. And because of that, we are not actually making any progress. We are running in place. Denzel Washington had this great thing. He's like, don't mistake movement for progress, because you can run in place and go nowhere, right? So for me, I would say when you're trying to do anything, and again, I I am one that work for school districts. I work with policing, and policing, that's a whole different ballgame, right? Anytime you're doing something, it's good to have a pause or a check moment to say, how much have I progressed? And if you find yourself you haven't progressed enough, or God forbid, went backwards, then that's when you want to re-strategize. And then when you get to a point where you're feeling burnt out, I think the one thing is that as long as you know what your purpose is, you gotta find a way to refuel yourself, right? And sometimes it's look at those small wins, right? You mentioned a couple of them, right, this, about in Florida, API saying those could be small wins. They might be not, grand, but those could re-energize and say, okay, now we got this. We got to move forward here. But I tell you right now, there have been days where I'm like, you know what? Do I have the time for this anymore? Like, because it can be. That's the reason why I call the title what I did. Welcome to the Sick Mind of the Same Person. Because if you think about constantly doing this work, whatever that work may be, if it's racism, ableism, those are my two spheres of influence, right? But it could be sexual orientation, sexuality, it could be all that stuff. If you're constantly fighting and don't have a chance to check in with yourself, you get burned out, and then it gets, yeah. I'm sorry.
No.
That's real. That's real right there.
Also, they- and don't have anyone checking in on them. We call stuff here, because it's community care.
Right.
And that's being able to sit out. And you can choose. It's so important. If you're gonna, there are times, depending on where you're living, what you got going on, there are times you're gonna feel like I'm trying not to use mental health language. So there are times you just feel like there's something wrong with you, that helps you, but not society, right? Because you're wrong. And you need those people around you the other thing is, I think if we think about more on your face,
So sometimes libraries will have boards of directors or policies, or there could just be a temporary shift in how to do things. It's how do we then engage the community? Because I think people forget that, the library isn't exactly a building, right? It's actually a center.
Yes.
Community center. There's also classes you can check out with the ladies. There's all this stuff.
Right.
But then how do you get into the other community spaces and remind them, we're here, we are for everyone. Please don't let the other things or forces shrink that, diminish that, or ultimately change it. I mean, Houston ISD out there vibration schools. They're now detention corrective centers for kids
Wow.
who misbehave. At least no one can get ahead of it and how does it happen sitting overnight. So like, how do we
Wow.
avoid that, or how do we, I get it, the libraries may not be the toolkit thing, but we're here for you. It's just reaching them when maybe they're like, ask the library.
I think one of the things you've got to do is check your mission statement as an organization. Make sure it's really reflective of what y'all believe, even when you're in committees, right? And make sure everyone they hear that mission statement all the time. Because it's a truly mission-driven space. You stick to it even when the times are hard, and people will know what it's about if you do that.
That's the strategy piece. That's the strategy piece. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And I will also add what you just said about the community. I will go back to the point about this. It is true. Sometimes people think that it's the other person only responsibility for the change that we need to do today in order for us to have a better future. But I truly believe that if each one of us, white, black, everyone take the responsibility of making change and just, building this community without this wall that says you belong to this place and you belong to the other place. And I also kind of add what's also Jordan was saying, that when was happening something to the Asian people, and other people say, why should they care? it's not me, they don't look like me, how we should care.
Right.
But the point is, if you really want to build like a place where everyone feels that they belong, each one of us should take responsibility,
Right.
because our kids, they are growing in an environment where they don't feel that they should not care for their friends that has a different social, sexual orientation. They think completely different, And when we, as an adult, we don't share this kind of responsibility that, okay, this is my friend. I know he looks different, but as a human being, we all look the same. There is no difference. The same way can get sick, the other person can get sick. Doesn't matter if he comes from the north, from the south, from Africa, from Asia, from China, from all the other places. Doesn't matter. We all are human beings. That's the point. There is no question. We all have the same color of our blood is red. Anyone has blue blood? I don't think so. Green blood? I don't think so. Really, each one of us should take responsibility as a community to make change in this world. Otherwise, we are just living, a fairy tale that, okay, this doesn't look like me. I should not care. No, you should care.
Yeah.
Because your child is your responsibility, and the other person's child is also your responsibility. One of the things that I really think about, back then, the culture, I love to think about the neighborhood. When everyone knows everyone, and if the child of your neighbors doesn't have anything to eat or doesn't feel safe, the other neighbor is here, like, oh no, come to my house, and let's do things together. And we are losing those kind of connection. And losing those kind of connection, we are creating an environment where each one is shutting down in their own world and say, I don't care about the other person. Why? Because my responsibility was not paid anymore to the other person's child. And we should really go back to the good things about our history, the way they lived before, and bring all this good things here, and not just like focus on the negative and not take the responsibility. So to answer your question, how should you deal with the board of directors and all these leaders that they have the right to make all those decisions? It's really hold them to take responsibility. Each one should take responsibility for what is happening and what is the best. For the community, what is the best for the students, and just not for themselves as a leader because they have to respond to the system, but for them as a leader because they have to respond to the community that feels like they want to feel they are loved, they belong, they are here for each other. That's really my answer.
The powerful word about responsibility, and I love the word responsibility because I always lead with that when I'm trying to help someone find their purpose, right? So even in my own institution, I was sitting on a table with the big rigs, and I'll say, what is our responsibility as a land grant institution to do X, Y, and Z, right? Because there is a responsibility that does lie there. The one thing I want to, I know we're almost out of time. Isn't that sad?
We out of time.
We're almost close to it.
Okay.
If not, I don't know if you want to hear me, but
The Sandman, come in.
I know.
Sandman from the
But-
Follow Show.
I also want to leave this group with something too, because I think this is a powerful discussion. And I was thinking about what is our responsibility as authors, as readers, as educators, as people. So one of the things I thought about this at this book festival is I started looking at some of the books, and I don't got a lot of money, so it is what it is. But I was like, which books can I purchase to then donate at my library when I get back home? Because I do collaborate with my library, and they do have a DEI space. And matter of fact, I'm doing a talk in my library on Tuesday, and on a book, and I want to say to them, here's some other books on representation, right? So I'm trying to figure out, what books can I buy to bring back, and the airport at that, because I ain't packed to like. But the other thing I want to ask folks is, what is our responsibility as authors? What is our responsibility as educators, as citizens, when it comes to folks trying to use stuff like banned books to divide us? Because I still do not think our narratives are divisive. I don't think so. I think, for me, to be to learn about somebody else's culture or somebody else's experience brings me closer together with that person or that person's culture. And I'm trying to think to myself, if we could commit as a community to say, I want to learn about somebody else's culture. But
That's it.
I was up to you now.
Right. And to add on to what Selma was saying, it reminds me of a Gandhi quote. He said, "Be the change that we see."
Yeah.
And so, in being authors and story writers and creators, because I'm sure, I know I didn't have stories that I could see myself in when I was little, and so in order to be a part of the solution, I become a writer so that I pass down a better literacy program to the youth that I wish I had when I was little. So being the change that we seek is a part of a critical part of the equation, and I think we all try to do that as creators here. I know but Amy said something about we want to talk about, something about therapy a while ago, but I think uh, as the barber, in a community where people don't have access to go to get therapy, some men fall into your chair and they like a boxer without a corner to come back to. They're like, get back out there, And that's a walk of black men that I don't think the rest of the world is aware of. When I had little kids and I'm walking through Macy's with my hands up like this, I'm like, what you doing? So I don't want people to think I'm sticking something in my bag because I have been stopped and asked that. I bought somebody's book and I just put the receipt in. But that's how traumatizing that could probably be. It's like I'm saying, like a boxer going out and not having a corner to come back to.
Yeah.
And so in sharing that story, there's a saying that we all say that hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
And what I found through writing is healing people can help heal other people.
Yes.
And so in me sharing that story, people from all over can identify with that. And then black men like, man, I appreciate you saying that because I got tired of the corner kept pushing me back out to the fight without giving me some water. And so that's I think being the change that we seek and being creators and instead of waiting on somebody to create our story, but we should all journal and share our own stories to help others.
I think we're out of time. I don't know if there's another group that's coming in at 4 o'clock. I believe so. So we're at 4 o'clock. Thank you all for this great discussion, though.
Thank y'all for contributing.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.